Good morning. Thanks for being here, here among all the quilts that we've got in the church here. Thanks to people online who are watching us. We're here today as part of the Kingdom Builders. So for those of you who don't know me, my name is Patrick Gallagher. This is Casey Wentz. We're part of the Kingdom Builders team here at Christ the King Lutheran in Cary, North Carolina. Thank you. Thank you. The Kingdom Builders, the role of the Kingdom Builders is to encourage and support people in the congregation as they help fulfill the mission of Christ the King to learn, live, and tell the story of God's grace. And we do that by helping them with finding ways to use their time and talents in the service of the church and the things that we do here. We do this in a number of ways, and we have done this in a number of ways over the years. We run the ministry fair every year, and the ministry fair is there to help connect people to groups within the church. We want people, members of the church, to be able to find organizations, clubs, associations that they can find like-minded people and can share and grow and participate and do things. The ministry fair sets up the opportunity for everybody to mingle and to see these booths set up where those groups can share their information. We do a noisy offering where we slide coins down the chute, and this is a great way to teach kids especially how to give and the fun of giving, and impart some important lessons about the idea of tithing and sharing what you have with others. We've done a gratitude tree to say, how can you express gratitude for people or organizations or things in your life that have helped form you and helped you to grow. So that reflection on gratitude is also an important thing that the Kingdom Builders wants to encourage. We provided information to the congregation about how CTK spends its money. Part of what we're doing as the Kingdom Builders is helping people to understand when you contribute to the church, what's the church doing with that money? So we give a whole breakdown of all the different areas of ministry that we support and the allocation of funds to those various organizations here. We do our fall appeal. So part of the Kingdom Builders is the stewardship piece of it. So we're now just getting kicked off in our stewardship drive that we do each year to encourage people to give, because not only are we encouraging them to give in order to support the church, but we understand that giving is an important part of people's overall faith life. So part of that is running the stewardship campaign each year to say, how can you make giving a part of your overall spiritual journey? And then finally, we do things to help facilitate giving for people in the church. If we want people to give, we want to do it in a way that's going to fit their lifestyle, their priorities, their financial situation. So we help and encourage them by running information sessions like this. So this, again, going back to that, this is a Sunday school class. This is an educational session. This is not an appeal for funds right now. That's part of our stewardship campaign. This is strictly about providing information to people who may want to understand what it means to make charitable donations and how that can impact them, and how the church provides different facilities for doing that in the best way possible. So, any questions about Kingdom Builders or about today's class? No? All right. With that, let me hand it over to Casey, who's going to talk about considerations associated with charitable giving.
Thank you, Pat. And I will point out that almost all of these are tax considerations associated with giving. It's really great that I've got 7 now, thank you, live bodies in here, and 2 of them have to be here. But that includes you, by the way. More importantly, what that also tells you is that we're going to record this and put it on the website, and it's going to be good for exactly 14 months. So it does have a deadline, so to speak, because it really only works for 2023 and 2024, because I don't know what Congress is going to do, and that's an important part. All of this advice, if you can call it such, all of these considerations are here based on current tax law and do not reflect what Congress may or may not decide to do. They normally decide to do something right around the 15th of December and backdate it all the way to the beginning of the year. So we'll see what happens next. Obviously, Kingdom Builders nor the church is a tax, legal, or accounting service. We're a church. And so none of this can be construed as advice. You're going to get a legal disclaimer from an attorney almost every single time. And please consult your own tax and legal advisors before you engage in any of the transactions that we're going to talk about today. Speaking of what we're doing today, very briefly, we're going to go over what currently is tax law. There goes my family to Sunday school. What currently is tax law. We're also going to go through a couple of giving strategies on how to make sure that less of what is the emperor's goes to the emperor. And then finally, I'm going to open it up to any questions that you may have, and hopefully you'll just get a couple of great questions that I can go over some more things that maybe affect you personally in your personal financial circumstance. So today, as we sit, there's a couple of things that are very important. I'm not going to go over all of U.S. tax law, but most of you know that we're on a graduated system. The more money you make, the higher your income tax rate, and vice versa. That goes for ordinary income along with long-term and preferred dividend capital gains rates. So if you have ordinary income currently and you're making more than about $450,000 as a married filing joint couple, you're in the top tax rate. That also pushes you into the top tax rate for long-term capital gains and qualified dividends. You then have lots of things else that happen on your tax return. The most important thing we're going to talk about today that's on this slide is the standard deduction. In 2023, that is $27,700 for couples. If both of you are over the age of 65, then you get a little bump, a little extra. It's about another $1,800 each. And then the important parts that are on the itemized deduction side, if you're not taking the standard deduction, you're itemizing, is the state and local tax deduction, the mortgage interest deduction, and the charitable deduction. All three of those are important. What I'm going to tell you now is that your state and local tax deduction, called SALT, the SALT deduction, is limited to $10,000. That includes all of your income tax along with all real estate property taxes. And then the charitable deduction, most important part about that, is that you can only give and deduct 60% of your adjusted gross income. You can give more than that, but you can only deduct up to 60% of your adjusted gross income, so long as what you are giving is not a gain property. And we'll talk a little bit more about that later. So there are basically three different types of giving that we talk about on a regular basis, and that is the regular and continuous giving. That's what you're giving weekly, monthly, or annually. And we'll go through a couple of strategies on how to better stack those giving types in order to take advantage of some of the tax law that is currently in place. And then you've got what we call windfall giving. I've won the lottery. Great, let us know, and we'll help you reduce your taxability on that lottery winnings. Or planned giving. So everyone in here, I hope, has an estate plan. Some kind of last will and estate, a power of attorney for someone to take care of you in case you can't take care of yourself, maybe a trust. All of those things go into your estate plan. There are certain things you can do when you're finalizing your estate plan that can benefit the church and ultimately benefit your estate. We're going to go over a couple of those as well. So the very first thing that you should know about regular and continuous giving is that the easiest thing is to just give cash. That's not necessarily bills coming into the church. That's from your bank account, whether it's check or auto pay. I think most of us are actually signed up through Church Center to do auto pay directly through an ACH transaction. That is the easiest and is the best, but it is not necessarily the best way to garner a good tax deduction. If you are 70 and a half or older, then you are required to do a required minimum distribution from any deferred accounts. That's IRAs, 401ks, and 403bs. Those required minimum distributions, you can avoid them. You can avoid putting them on your tax return by instead doing what's called a QCD, a qualified charitable distribution. And that's basically where you call up your financial advisor and you say, hey, instead of sending me my RMD, please send a QCD to CTK ASAP. And you hope that your FA knows what you're talking about. And most of the time they will. But what it allows them to do and allows you to do is to keep that required minimum distribution off of your tax return, which lowers your adjusted gross income. For those of you who are on Social Security benefit, this is good news, because as you were told in the 50s, Social Security will never be taxed, which turns out not to be true. Now Social Security can be taxed up to 85%, which means that if you've got other taxable income on your tax return, more of your Social Security is in fact taxed. If you take something off of your tax return, like that required minimum distribution, it will lower your AGI, and it may help you to avoid taxation on your Social Security benefits, which is great. It also does not count towards that 60% threshold that we talked about earlier, which means you can give as much as you want, but you can only deduct up to 60%. It doesn't count towards that 60%. So it does have some pretty decent benefits. The last one that I'll talk about is fairly important without getting into a lot of morbidity. When you die, all of the stuff that you own when you die gets what's called a step-up in basis. That means that the people that inherit your stuff receives a cost basis equal to the fair market value on the date that you pass away. For instance, I bought a piece of property for $100. Now it's worth $1,000. I pass away, my child sells that piece of property for $1,000. They don't pay any taxes. This is great. Had I sold that same piece of property right before I died, I would pay taxes on the $900 gain. So this is a great estate planning tool that you can use to benefit your children. 401ks and IRAs do not get a step-up in basis. Your children inherit them, they draw the money down, they pay tax on that money. So here's the great thing about QCDs. If you give it to the church rather than giving it to your kids, the church is not going to pay taxes on it, but your kids would. So that means you're benefiting the church more than you could benefit your children. What does that mean? Give your children stuff that is not in a deferred plan. Give the church stuff that is in a deferred plan. That's stretching the dollar and helping everybody get just a little bit more. This is the ages for when a required minimum distribution is required. I'll leave those in the slides so that everybody can look at it later. The last cash type of giving that we talk about, strategy at least, is called bunching or lumping. The 2017 Tax Cuts and Jobs Act increased the standard deduction to levels we've never seen before. Now you have to have $27,000 of itemized deductions before you're eligible to itemize. What that means is that most of us who have a little bit of medical, a little bit of SALT, and a little bit of mortgage interest don't itemize and are not going to itemize even if we give charitably. What you can do, though, is if you know you're going to give $10,000 a year for the next 3 years, and you want to try to take advantage of some taxable write-off, you can lump and give all $30,000 of those gifts in the first year. That will allow you to bump your itemized deductions up above the standard deduction in the first year, in 2023, but you still get to take the standard deduction for the next 2 years. So, overall, over those 3-year periods, you're taking $100,700 of deductions for the 3-year period rather than $89,900 over that same 3-year period. You're saving a little bit in taxes. It's actually whatever your tax rate multiplied times about $10,000. So if you're at the 30% tax rate, we just saved $3,000 together, and you don't feel it quite as badly even though you gave it all in 1 year. Excuse me. And then the next kind of giving I want to talk about is windfall giving. This is, you win the lottery, you bought Apple stock in 1980, and you have a gain of 10 cents a stock in it, and it's now worth, you've got a basis of 10 cents a stock in it, and it's now worth $170. You're looking to get rid of it. You don't want to really leave it to your kids because you don't ever give a 25-year-old millions of dollars without some kind of rule in place. Where do you put this that's going to be the best for you, your family, and is also tax efficient? One of the things that you can do is to, instead of leaving it to your children or selling it and suffering the gain, is to give it to the church. Now, this does a couple of things, but most importantly, you do not suffer the gain, and you get to take a charitable deduction against other income that you may have. Now, I can tell you a couple of things. If that stock is now worth $170 and you've held it for more than a year, your charitable deduction is $170 for that stock. If you've held it for less than a year, which means it's short term, then you only get that 10-cent deduction. You only get your cost basis, which is not quite as good for you, so you might as well hold it and only give things to the church that you've held for more than a year. A couple of points, very briefly, is that securities that are traded on a stock exchange do not need an appraisal because we have one. The stock exchange is that appraisal. If it's anything other than that and it's worth more than $5,000, we'll have to get a qualified appraisal done. That's really no big deal if it's real estate. We just talked to a realtor. And even if you have things like collectibles, artwork, manuscripts that are from middle age or the middle, early on, and they're worth something now, we can get them appraised. Here's the caveat, though. CTK is not going to hold any appreciated assets. We're going to get them from you, and then we're going to sell them pretty much immediately. And the reason that is because we're not in the business of holding assets. We're in the business of liquidating those assets and pushing the money towards the ministries of the church, which we think to be fairly important. And then this still also works if you own your own business and you're about to sell. Talk to us and let us see if we can help. We might be able to reduce your taxable event from that sale by taking, so to speak, some of the proceeds off of your tax return and giving them to the church. And then the final giving strategy, as we discussed earlier, is planned giving. And the easiest two things there is to make CTK a designated beneficiary of your IRA or 401k, or to make a gift in your last will and testament. Those are the two easiest. The harder one, that usually requires an attorney or a financial planner to help you draw up, is a charitable remainder trust. And there are two kinds of charitable remainder trust, CRUTs and CRATs. The way a charitable remainder trust works is that you make a contribution to the trust now, for which you get a partial tax deduction. And then you say to the trust, I'm giving you $1 million. I want $50,000 back for the rest of my life. And the trust does that, and at the end of your life, the trust will distribute the remainder of what's in the trust to whatever charities you choose. So this is really good if you are suffering, again, use that word, suffering a large taxable event in this year, and you want to find an easy way to offset some of that taxability, then a CRUT or a CRAT would make sense for you. Otherwise, if you have low limited income from Social Security benefits, a CRUT or a CRAT doesn't really make sense for you. So you can stop listening to this boring part now. But regardless, if you are in the mood to talk about a trust, I would suggest you go and talk to your financial advisor. Most of them deal with CRUTs and CRATs all the time. I know Fidelity does, which is a big one that the Lutheran community uses. So does Schwab Charitable. Charles Schwab has a charitable piece to them. And I know that a few of the folks over at the Mission Investment Fund with the ELCA have dealt with these in the past. So you could also, if you have a savings account with them, you can at least get some information from them, but I don't think they'll help you draw them up. So a couple of things, benefits to doing one of these charitable remainder trusts is that you preserve the value of that highly appreciated asset. That means that if it's Apple stock, you put the Apple stock into trust, you're not paying taxes on it, you're getting a charitable contribution deduction for it, and then it's continuing to appreciate in value. And that only benefits the trusts and the charities that will benefit from that trust upon your death. And then it's also, all of the income within the trust is tax exempt. And anything that you can give to a trust, anything that you can give to a charitable entity or a church, you can also put into the trust. So that's the same cash, securities, some closely held stock, real estate, and some other things like life insurance policies, but you really don't do that very often unless there's a different circumstance. Okay, one of my favorite quotes from me is, many donors will give regardless of tax consequences, but if you help them save taxes, they'll be able to give more. And I think that remains true, and I'm here to help you do exactly that. And so what I'd like to do right now is just open up. If anybody has any questions, I'm happy to provide answers. Otherwise, we appreciate you tuning in or stopping by, and we'll help another way in any way that we can. Any questions from the 5 of you that have remained all the way to the end? Okay. Any chance there's any comments or questions on YouTube?
Casey, one quick question.
Sure.
You were mentioning Fidelity and other organizations that handle that. Is Thrivent also in that category? Do they do financial advising, or are they strictly there for the insurance?
I don't know.
Okay.
I know that they used to have Thrivent financial planners. I haven't talked to one in about 15 years, so I don't know.
Okay.
I can find out. It's not a hard one to find out. Any other questions? Sure.
What was the difference between the CRAT and the CRUT?
Mark, can you go back to about 2 slides ago? I think it'd probably be easier for you to do it than for me. One letter is the real answer. The CRUT is an annuity trust. I'm sorry, the CRAT is an annuity trust, and the CRUT is a remainder uni trust. So with a CRAT, you say, I want $100,000 a year. I'm going to give you $2 million. I want you to give me $100,000 a year. If you invest wisely, I'm talking to you as the trust, then the beneficiaries of that trust, the charitable beneficiaries of that trust, are going to benefit more, okay? That's a little dangerous for the trust and also for the charities, because if we have 10 really bad years and then you die, there's not as much corpus of the principal left. The CRUT, which is a little safer for your charity, and is also, by the way, gets you a larger tax deduction, you distribute a percentage of the value of the trust. I give you $1 million. I want 5% back every year. Okay, you give me 5% back. That's 900 and whatever thousand. But you also have a bad year, right? The next year, I'm not going to get 50,000 back. I may get less than that. But it still preserves more of the corpus of the trust, so that when you do pass away and you leave it to the charitable entities, then there's more of it there. Yeah, that's pretty much it. No problem. Any other questions? Sure. Yes, it's a pretty good announcement. We're planning on putting this in PDF form, these slides in PDF form, on Church Center, which will allow you to study them a little closer. And again, my information is in the membership directory on Church Center, so feel free to reach out to me if you have any other questions. I'll be able to get you in touch with the right people to help answer them or answer them myself.
Yes, and so this presentation also will be on YouTube for anybody who wants to just go back and review some of the things that Casey said. And please feel free to reach out to any member of the Kingdom Builders. Again, my name is Patrick Gallagher, Casey Wentz. We have a number of other members of the church that are part of the Kingdom Builders, so feel free to reach out to any of them. The Kingdom Builders are really here to help facilitate that giving and the contributions that you want to make to the ministry at Christ the King. So thank you for those of you who have participated. Thank you to everybody online. And please feel free to reach out to us with any questions or follow-up. All right? Thank you.